Hello, welcome back to the second episode of the QuadCast. It's me, Jacob from Quad Hunting, and today we have a special guest, Nathan Dean, aka the Dean Machine. Nathan was a reporter I used to work with at the station that I'm leaving, and he has since moved on. He's going to talk about kind of what he's been up to. We're going to talk about the behind the scenes of news, what kind of goes on that you guys don't see all the time, and then we're talking about how COVID has unfortunately impacted sports. And then we try to end it on a happier note. We'll see how that works out. But today's episode, make sure if you guys are watching on YouTube, leave a like, comment, subscribe, all that fun junk. If you're listening on Apple Podcasts, leave a 5-star review. And let's get right into the podcast, not video. It's a video and a podcast, but let's get right into it. How's it doing? How you doing, dude? How you doing, dude?
I'm doing well, man. Life has been good. Appreciating every day that I get, as much as cliche as it is. But 2020 has probably been the most unpredictable year we've ever had. I think one of a good friend of mine from college worded it best that it felt like 2020 is this. So hopefully a comeback story for a football game, because it's like the first half from January to June was an absolute disaster. Not a single play worked. We didn't score. Every single thing went wrong. We kept turning the ball over. But maybe in the second half, things will look up. So I've kind of been pursuing a different career here in the second half of the year for a different passion, and just a whole lot happier than I was before.
I mean, you're a Jaguars fan. I'm a Lions fan, so we know those first half meltdowns can continue into the second half. So
They can continue. Yeah, they can continue.
hopefully
But
not.
sometimes things can turn around. So hopefully 2020, the second half will be memorized as a comeback story.
I definitely would like to think that. I also keep telling everyone, I said I hope this decade's just getting everything bad out of the way, and then the rest of the decade's a good one.
Yeah, for sure.
So we both started at the news station the same day. Our birthdays are within 6 days of each other.
Yeah,
So I want to talk a little bit about experience working in news.
sure.
We both kind of came in with little experience, college experience. But from your side, you got more into the talent side. I got more into the production side. So just talk a little bit about your experience as a reporter, or an MMJ, multimedia journalist is what some companies are now calling it.
My experience as an MMJ and a reporter was a humongous learning experience for me. I spent so many years in college wanting to pursue that industry and pursue being a reporter, whether it was a regular news reporter or a sports reporter. I didn't exactly know which route I wanted to go, but at the time, that's where I envisioned myself. And I made a lot of good friends very early on with my experience in news. But there were a lot of issues back home that were out of my control, that were conflicting with the job. And I did everything that I could to kind of keep them separated from each other. But once I started to feel like it played a role into impacting my job, I had to make the decision that was best for me. And the station was very understanding of that. And um, I'm very blessed for the opportunity that I had. And I continue to encourage people that are wanting to pursue that as a career to definitely do so, because I learned so much in the months that I was there. But I think for me, it was early on that I understood that this is just not where I want to be as a career. So now I'm kind of shifting gears and pursuing a whole different career as a registered behavioral technician. My job now is to focus on helping kids that have autism and helping them understand how to communicate, how to have controlled behaviors, and be able to associate with people, and not let the uniqueness of having autism get in the way of that. So it's an exciting opportunity, and it's something that really makes me happy, and I'm excited to keep pursuing that. But I can tell you that being a reporter taught me so much and helped me have no fears of of talking to someone, have no fears to ask something, and just have no fears and approaching every story because you just never know which one's going to make some big headlines. So it was a really cool opportunity, and I'll never forget it for sure.
See, as somebody who has a younger brother who has Down syndrome, I really love hearing about your new career path in that new area and how much you're enjoying that. So that's awesome for me to hear, just having a younger brother who has Downs and disabilities.
Sure,
So,
man.
but let's go a little bit back to reporting. What is one misconception that you think a lot of people who aren't in news have about reporters or anchors, and something that you would want to clear up?
um, that's a good question. I think a big misconception uh, for me was when I became an MMJ. Uh, the term multimedia journalist was kind of the term used for someone who has to do all of the on-camera work, off-camera work on their own in such a huge time crunch. And I think, from my family's perspective, a lot of people believe that when a story is put together, it's almost like one person films it, one person stands in front of the camera, one person writes it, one person edits it, one person sends it out, one person makes sure there's. They thought there were all these different roles in large news stations and nationally broadcasted news stations. That is definitely the case, but in situations for stations in small markets like you and I were in, you learn from the ground running that that's pretty much all you still work as a team, and there's still a lot of people that help make sure something does get on air at the right time, but it's all on the reporter to really put a story together, interview uh, the right people, make sure they're asking the right questions, make sure they're writing the script on time, make sure it's submitted in time for approval because you can't submit it right when the show's starting. Make sure your camera's on, make sure your live unit's on. There's a lot of things you have to remember to do throughout the day, and it's such a blur, and it's very, very fast paced. So a lot of people have this misconception that reporters in small markets have this whole crew of people that follow them around to get something done very quickly, and it's a very easy job, and that is definitely not the case.
Yeah, the biggest misconception I've seen about reporters is that reporters are just they're the pretty face that says the news, that tells people the news, while other people are doing all the legwork behind them. And
Sure.
like you said, in bigger markets, they're afforded that opportunity because they have the crew members around them. Whereas in local news, there's none of that.
Yeah.
You do all the work yourselves. You have me constantly calling, going, "Where's your shot? Why aren't you up yet?"
Yes. I'm pretty sure I had many phone calls from technical directors and producers wanting to know where the hell I was at 4:50 when
10 minutes before live, and
and it was one of those things where you almost didn't have time to explain to them or give them an answer. It was more so like the only answer you could give is I'm pulling up the live unit right now. And then once the show's over, you could give them the full detailed story of what happened
yep.
because you're on a huge time crunch and you just got to make it happen.
That's what I was telling. I said in my last podcast is our reporters like your story could change 2 hours before live, and all of
That
a
is,
sudden breaking news happens, and the story you worked on from 9 a.m. all the way up until 2 p.m. has now been kind of thrown away, and you have to start from scratch on this whole new breaking news story and have everything that you just done in that all that time ready to go in 2 hours. And I couldn't do it. That's why I sit behind the scenes. I sit behind the TV and I hit the buttons. But
I
you
have
guys,
a very good example of that
go
for
ahead.
anybody
Go for it.
that's interested in knowing how that works. I remember this day so vividly. Everybody was all hands on deck because Florida State was announcing their new head coach with Mike Norvell
Yep.
after head coach Willie Taggart was fired. And shortly thereafter, former head coach of Memphis was heading to Tallahassee to be the new head coach of the Seminoles. And all day we were kind of all in different aspects and different perspectives of this story that was really important for the city of Tallahassee. And my perspective was getting fan reaction from a lot of fans and college students at the local strip, like where there's a bunch of bars and restaurants right by the stadium. And I from the morning, and then when they had the press conference when they announced him as the head coach, we had a shot at night, and we had all these different stories of fan reaction we were putting together. And then shortly, not too long before the show happened, I want to say it was probably 30 to 45 minutes. I was in the middle of editing the package that they wanted, and unfortunately, there was breaking news that a car drove into a lake, and two people were killed. And it was, discussed as a potential suicide or how they were, but these two people were killed, and they rushed me over there because they wanted me up as soon as the newscast started. And that was going to be our lead story. And I remember that because I was going there realizing I had 30 minutes once I got there to find someone to interview, whether it was a public information officer or whoever, get some video, edit all of that, put some kind of script to kind of basically ad lib it, and be live for the breaking news when the show starts. And I was thinking in my head, okay, how am I going to do this? I'm going to get there. I'm going to interview a public information officer. I'm going to get some video of caution tape. I'm going to get video of the car and just the area, and boom, that'll be it. And it turned out that the witness, the only person that saw the car go into the lake, was there, and he came up to me and said he was willing to be interviewed. And it was a very chilling and sad moment, but I got a lot of praise for how much I was able to handle that from a lot of people, and really appreciated that feedback, and saw some things that I could work on. And that was something that I'll never forget, because when I woke up that morning, I envisioned myself doing all of these things for Mike Norvell. And at the end of the day, that's just not what I did. So that was just kind of how you have to be quick on your feet.
I distinctly remember that because it was also a weekend.
Yes.
And we don't run full crews on weekends. It's basically a skeleton crew to do this. I don't want to say the same amount of work as you would on a weekday, but you still have to fill an hour's worth of news.
Yep.
Every weekend.
I was the weekend reporter. I can tell you all about that. So.
And I remember that because I got called the day of when Norvell was hired. It was, hey, we want you in here to direct the newscast. So I distinctly remember most of what you talked about. I wasn't there for that late show, the one that you had the breaking news with the car, but I remember distinctly that whole process that day of everyone running around, everyone getting called in and running around. And that's the thing a lot of people also don't realize with news, you're on call no matter what, even if you're on call or not.
You're always on call. Yeah,
you're
if
always
you're
on
not
call.
on call, you're still on call. Yeah.
You get a phone call at any minute just being like, we need you to come in, and you're expected to show up ready to go. Even especially with living in Florida with hurricanes, that's a whole nother story. And
yep.
Luckily,
anytime there was a hurricane or tropical storm coming, everybody knew that day was either you were at work or you were just waiting to find out when you were going to be.
You were going to end up at work at some point.
Yeah.
We didn't have to, while we worked there, we didn't have to go through a major hurricane. We had some stronger tropical storms, low-end hurricanes, but nothing that really impacted our area. But I'll never forget the one Saturday, everyone having to come in for, I don't think it was Dorian. I think it was one after that. But yeah, and it was all hands on deck on a Saturday, and you didn't have much notice besides Friday, an email like Friday night that was, everyone needs to be here tomorrow like at 3 a.m. or something ridiculous like that.
Yep.
Because they were running.
I did a tropical. I believe it was a tropical storm, and we were covering like different areas all across the Big Bend area of Florida, and I was teaming up with our friend Jada Williams, and we were going out to Apalachicola, Florida, and that was where it kind of hit the most because we were right along the coast there. And I waited for her at the Walmart parking lot at 3:30 a.m. at like the halfway point in Wakulla County. And I just kind of waited there for her. And then when she got there, we just drove around and just stayed in touch with our news directors and made sure that we told them if we saw anything, and we didn't saw anything. And then we just I remember we just went live randomly and just did the best that we could to stay safe and get the story out there.
Because you were also in an area where there isn't great live signal. That's what a lot of people don't realize is like all of these live signals work in the same way as a cell phone does,
Yep.
but it takes so much more power to send back video and audio for news than it does to take a cell phone call. So I remember, yeah, the whole morning dealing with, oh, their shot's up, and it's gone. Oh, they're up, they're stable enough, we'll take them, and they just disappeared. I remember dealing with that all morning because it's just that area, just northern Florida is terrible when it comes to doing live shots, unless you are in a big town, and big towns down here aren't big towns.
That
So,
was that was some of the early advice that everyone was giving me. News directors, anchors, other reporters, uh, when using a live view or a TVU, especially in those areas, uh, when you have downtime, when you've edited a certain show, like if you've got VOSOTs and packages, but you've done like the first two VOSOTs and all you got to do is finish the package. Anytime you have downtime, lunch break, turn your live view on, your TVU, and make sure you have a signal where you're at. Because if you don't, you need to now plan out where are you going to be live from. And if it's a good spot to be live from, but you don't have a signal, it's useless.
mhm.
So that was something that I learned because early on I'm like, okay, this is a really cool shot and they're gonna like. And we turned the live view on, and you guys couldn't see me at all.
Because,
So
yeah, no
there was
signal was
no
coming back.
point of me trying to get that shot because I couldn't have the signal. So if sometimes you just drive 3 minutes down the road and there's a little spot that has a great signal along the road, and that's just what you had to roll with.
Yep. I remember we both also helped cover high school football during the fall last year. And I remember having to go to like a McDonald's parking lot just to be able to get enough signal to be able to send back the files. And I didn't have to luckily stand up in front of the camera and talk, but just like even sending the files back takes so much. And I only ever did it one day a week for a 2 minute long clip, or not
Mm.
even, maybe a minute long clip. And I hated doing that.
Yeah, during the time that I was able to help with high school football, it was an absolute blast. Like that was probably one of my favorite days of the week, not only when it was Friday, but also just because there were a lot of things that a lot of people were going to be doing, but it just felt like a true team effort because
Mm-hmm.
everybody was going to different spots all over the area, submitting things and helping put the scripts together, helping Allison and Lori. Like it was just a full-on effort for high school football, and it was just a whole lot of fun and getting that experience of filming high school football games. And I remember Allison taking you and I out there and just
Yep.
showing us
Is that
how
during
the
our
best way
first
to do
week?
it. And it's like little things that people were teaching me, I carried throughout everything that I did. Like Allison taught me something I never would have thought to use. And she said, okay, if you're filming play after play after play, we do not have a whole lot of time to edit it and send it back. So if you're filming a play and
Sure.
it's a touchdown, it's a great catch, close the lens, hit the record
Yep.
button, and then hit the record button again. Because when you go back, it was a breeze to edit.
Oh
Like it
yeah.
was
You
so
just looked.
easy.
You looked for the clip that had the black that just started out black, and then you went to the clip before that, and you knew that's
Yep.
the one you wanted. Yeah, I remember doing that too. Because my old job, I covered sports all the time, and we had our system for knowing when to go back, and that was either I would just have to write down the clip number, or I would roll the entire time, and I would only stop recording when I knew that I had a clip that I wanted to use, which takes a lot of space. We didn't have that using our little 16 gig
Right.
SD cards. So you had to be very deliberate on what you shot. And yeah, I remember, yeah, when she said that, like the light bulb clicked in my head, and I was like, that's such valuable information you never would have
Yep.
even thought about. Getting a compliment from Allison was different than getting a compliment from anyone else.
For sure.
I will say Allison's probably my favorite on camera personality we have.
Yeah.
I,
Yeah.
I,
She
I
was.
always tried to avoid giving that title out, but definitely probably it's Allison.
From day one, man. She was so passionate and was so just genuine, caring, and helpful. Um, from whether she, even if I was doing something that was completely unrelated to sports, she was interested about like, okay, like how's your day going? Like, what are questions you have about
Mm-hmm.
how to shoot certain things? She was just so helpful from the beginning, and during my entire time there, that's just who she was. Who she was on camera was the exact same person she was off camera, and I
100%.
just cannot say enough about how much she helped me during my time there.
Yeah, she was one of the first people to actually give me any critique on how I was directing. And she only had to deal with my directing for a couple minutes each day during the 6 o'clock newscast and the 11 o'clock. She didn't have to deal with it like the other anchors did, but she was the first one to be like, hey, you're doing it this way. How about you try to do it this way? And she was, even though she
Yeah.
had so much experience and she's been in the industry for a while, she never is demeaning with when she gives you her critiques and her
Mhm.
she comes at it as I want you to be better so you can help me be better,
Yep.
and that's the best relationship you can have with anyone in a newsroom.
She would take, I remember my first football game I filmed by myself, and she said, "You did such a great job. Since I have some downtime, let's go over some of the clips that you shot and see how can we make them better." So like she told me that I did a great job, but then at the same time she was like, "Hey," almost like a coach. She was like, "Let's go back and look at the film and like see what can we change that can make it even better." And I, every time that I was going out for a different football game, I remembered things that she was teaching me, and ways that I can make my highlight reel look better than the person next to me. And that was just something that I'll never forget from her. So she just recently signed an extension to be
Yep.
there for a couple more years, I believe. And they made the best decision they could have made by keeping her around, because
100%.
she works her absolute tail off, and I'm excited to see that she's going to stay there for a while.
Same. She's one of my favorite people. I love a lot of the people there. I don't really dislike anybody. I mean,
Hmm.
we both kind of, yeah. We know who, but
Yeah, we got it. We got it.
I'm not going to call out any names.
Every rose has its thorn.
Oh, yes. TXL had a couple thorns,
Just a couple.
just a
Just a couple.
couple,
Yeah, but
but
it was still a pretty rose.
still a pretty decent rose. Yeah, it's still a pretty decent rose. But yeah, so we talked a little bit about covering football. We're both big football fans. You've got your Jaguars polo on. I got all the Lions stuff
Unfortunately.
behind me. Yeah,
Unfortunately.
we're
Yep.
both fans of teams. They both have cat mascots, and they're both pretty bad. But
Very bad would probably be the better adjective.
I want to talk a little bit about the coronavirus and how it's impacted sports. You left this news station to go more into sports. And so, how was that? Like, you were in the industry when all that was going on.
Hmm.
And obviously, you're not in it now after what we talked about earlier with your new career. What was that like?
That was just one of the most stressful days of my life. I just moved back home to Jacksonville, and I was starting to get my feet wet in the sports area, working with a media company that was a small media company, but focused a lot on the top high school athletes in the area. And things were going really well. And I was starting to get a feel for how I wanted to make my own content. We were talking about potential podcasts that I could do, videos, had all these great ideas. And I remember the day that March Madness was canceled. And that took my breath away, because I was hearing about coronavirus. I was understanding the severity of it for a little bit, but I just never envisioned that it would reach the extent that we are now 4 months later. And I'll never forget the feeling of I was writing a weekly magazine article for the company about different things in sport, and I wrote one about how the coronavirus is impacting sport. And this is 4 months ago when it started in March. And I believe when I submitted it, I edited that article 64 times, if I remember the number, because there were so many cancellations, there were so many reschedules. Um, and when I left the building, it finally dawned on me that I'm working in the industry that this is affecting. And when the announcements were made that high school sports were canceled for the foreseeable future, and there was nothing for me to do job wise, it took my breath away, because I just couldn't believe how fast something was gone. And it teaches people to not take things for granted and to really appreciate every single day, because in an instant it can be taken away. Um, I remember watching the game when the Jazz and Thunder, the game just didn't happen.
Mm-hmm.
And everybody's kind of in the stands looking at the person to the left, to the right, and then everybody watching is kind of like looking at the screen, looking at their phone, because everybody's like, how could this happen? And here we are 4 months later, and you start to get a glimpse of things coming back. There was this absolute reality TV show that is Major League Baseball, when everything was going back and forth of, were they going to play, were they not going to play? The Players Association couldn't agree with the owners, and it was a
Mm-hmm.
huge mess. Um, and it just really resonated with me about how serious this got. And I completely agree with the way that we've been doing things, that it's important to set this aside for now, because it's more important for the future to keep everyone safe and healthy. Because if things are taken away for a year and they come back next year when we've figured out a vaccine or figured out a cure, however they do it, um, it's really better for the future by taking a break for a year. And as much as that sucks to say, it's just, I know we will all be thankful if we make that decision after this year, because if we don't and it gets worse, now we're talking a much more harmful virus and a much longer delay to having things come back.
Exactly. I remember exactly where I was when the NBA canceled the rest of their season, because I immediately I was in a group chat with a bunch of friends talking about March Madness. And as soon as the NBA said they were done, I said, March Madness isn't happening. I texted them in that group chat, and everyone was still kind of, oh, COVID's not that huge of a deal yet. It hasn't affected me. It's only affecting old people. But then as you saw all these, Rudy Gobert was the first person to get the
Yeah.
coronavirus in the NBA, at least reported. And and then when everything started just slowly, it started off slow, like the NBA's done, and then a couple of days later it was March Madness is done, and then it just snowballed so fast after that to where bars are closed, you can't go get haircuts, and all of that kept snowballing and snowballing. And I hate talking politics, but I hate how coronavirus became such a political topic.
100%.
You could tell which side people were on based on their feelings on coronavirus.
Absolutely.
And that was handled so poorly. We didn't have all the answers. People thought we had all the answers. We still don't have all the answers today.
Hmm.
And so I hate how it was handled. But I had said, I saw a post way back when this was all going on that either 4 months from now, either we're going to think that we did absolutely too much and that nothing should have happened, that we didn't need this at all, or we were going to look back and go, we should have done a lot more. I personally am on the side of we should have done a lot more. Obviously, look at the numbers. I mean, I don't care if you think this disease is as dangerous as people say it is. Anytime that there's a disease like this, something should have happened a long time ago. So
I
yeah,
think I mean, I completely agree with you. It's funny to me because I remember back in high school I had a teacher when a student asked a question about what to study for a test, right? Because they were in fear of the unknown, and they were like, what if I don't know what to study? And the harsh reality and harsh lesson that he gave us was, teach everything that I showed you, and some of it will be on the test, some of it will be not. And they said, well, what if that's a waste of time? And he said, well, at least you'll be over prepared than not prepared at all.
Mm-hmm.
And looking back 5 years later in a pandemic, that is the exact situation that we are in. We have people that don't take it seriously enough because there's still the unknown, and there's people that are going way far beyond they need to and taking to a much larger extreme, because everybody is in this mindset that they don't like not being told what to do almost, because nobody seems to know the answers to this thing yet. And we're all just trying to keep each other safe by just doing the basic things like avoiding large crowds, wearing a mask. Like, it's just little things that we can do to kind of reduce the number of people impacted, because it's still going to happen, but it reduce it and not see a really large spike like we have seen. And that's just something that I really hope people start to learn, that is it very serious or is it not?
Mm-hmm.
Some situations you see people that test positive and they come out, and like some of the athletes have been asymptomatic and they say, oh, this doesn't even feel like a cold. I just had a couple sneezes and I tested positive. And then as a Jaguars fan, when this thing started, one of the first major athletes that got it besides Rudy Gobert was retired offensive tackle Tony Baselli from the Jaguars, and he almost died. He was
Mm-hmm.
on he was in intensive care. And that's the scariest thing to me about it, is person A can get it and you would never know because they never get sick for those whole 2 weeks that they're in quarantine. And then person B can get it and they could die tomorrow. Like, it is just so night and day. And that's why people just really need to take time to focus on what's important in life. And for me, the months that I was unemployed because of COVID, that taught me a whole lot about life and about to remind myself of what my New Year's resolution was for 2020. 2020, my New Year's resolution was I was not going to let things out of my control impact my mental health and stress upon those things. And the whole first half, I completely went away from that. Like, completely went away from it. And it was kind of just recently that I reminded myself of that New Year's resolution that I made, and a different career path opportunity came about. Some things started turning around in sports a little bit, and things just started to get better. And once I finally just accepted the fact that this is where we're at, and I'm still alive, so I have some kind of purpose here, and just to keep appreciating each day. And that's really what I hope people continue to do, man.
I've always lived by the motto, better safe than sorry. And I'm going to continue living by it. I don't care if I look weird wearing a mask. I like it because I can make faces at people underneath of it and they can never tell.
I have a Jaguars mask too, so.
But, so, I don't know what the future in sports holds. I like it, like you said, I kind of hope we take some time. And I know the NBA bubble for right now has appeared to look okay. And if any sport league is doing it okay, I would say it's probably been the NBA so far. They were the first one to cancel the rest of the season, cancel all the activities. But meanwhile, the one I am worried about is, well, of course, the one that I have my favorite teams a part of. I'm not so thrilled at how they've handled it so far. The whole banning the jersey swap after the game, even though these guys have been tackling, bleeding, breathing, sweating, and all that on top of each other. At least with basketball, you can limit the you can limit how many players are on the court at one time because it's only 10. And then with a couple of bench players, coaches, you can really control that environment better than you can control a football game. Those guys are in much more close proximity to each other every play, and the game just involves you hitting each other. But it wouldn't be the first time the NFL has put the bottom line over players' health.
Hmm.
So I'm not too surprised that they're still trying. They're promising by the end of this month it's going to be training camps are going to be in session, and the players are been kind of vocal against that no, there's no agreement in place, and it's going to be a very interesting next few weeks.
There's two sides of Nathan here. There's Nathan that has from the beginning said, "Oh, they're going to cancel everything. This country cannot live knowing that football is not going to be on TV in the fall. Like
Mm-hmm.
this country cannot process that idea. They can't
Especially
accept that
college
idea.
football.
Not at all. I mean, that is just what this country just focuses on when it's starting in July/August. Um, so I've had this mindset where I'm like, there's no way they can cancel football. As a fan and knowing how our country is, like I just don't see it happening. But at the same time, it won't surprise me at all if it just doesn't happen
Mm-hmm.
because in these last couple months, every month it seems like the NFL has accepted a slight setback, and it's just gotten more and more. Like when the draft started, they're like, okay, well we'll have to do the draft virtually, but these players are still going to play. They're still going to train. They're still going to learn the playbook. All these things. They're going to have to do their rookie meetings and their first rookie camps. All of that will be virtual through Zoom, but slowly but surely things have changed. Like the Jaguars had 2 games that they were supposed to play in London. Then they were like, oops, we can't go to London. So now we have 8 games in London. Let's try to convince our fans to please come to those games that we took away from you. And then the ticket sales people for the Jaguars had to work hard to try to convince people to go to those games. And then they made this announcement that they're revoking some of the sales and um, some of the season tickets because they're going to have to change the whole process because they cannot have a whole lot of people in the building. And they're
Mm-hmm.
trying to figure out how they're going to potentially have fans there. The Ravens think that they can have 14,000 fans and keep everybody distant. But everybody's having to make sacrifices, whether in sports or not. And in football, I will be genuinely shocked if September rolls around and on Sunday at 1 o'clock, the Jags will be playing the Colts at TIAA Bank. it's really struggling for me to believe that will happen.
I'm kind of in the same boat. I mean, and if it does happen, you got to think about all they didn't get the proper conditioning, the proper practicing. I mean, they should have gone through at least the rookie camps by now. OTAs should have happened by now. And now you're getting to when training camp's getting ready to start, and we don't even know if that's going to happen. So if the season does kick off when it's supposed to, I wouldn't be surprised the amount of injuries that are going to happen because people aren't prepared. It's going to be a weird product because they're not going to be in top shape. They're not going to be, teams aren't going to have gelled together and have the chemistry. It could be, I was telling one of my friends, I can see it definitely looking like that 2011 season, because 2011 was the season that offensive numbers were off the charts because of the lockout that offseason before. They didn't get all that offseason time, similar to what's going on so far now, that you're going to see offensive numbers spike because chemistry on defense is the most important out of all the chemistries, at least I believe.
Mm-hmm.
And they're not going to have that time to gel and time to work as a team, to where if it happens, I would not be surprised at all to see an offensive explosion this year compared to years past.
Yeah, I'm disappointed for a lot of um, players right now just because the 2020 draft was one of the most anticipated drafts of all time,
Mm-hmm.
with the unbelievable amount of talent. Because it's cliche in the NFL to say it, but in this draft particular, it is 100% true that a first round and a second round pick, they were both, all of those players could have been taken in the first round. Like all of
Mm-hmm.
those players were just
It
insanely
was a
talented in
highly
college.
heavy, top end heavy draft.
And the amount of quarterback talent in this draft, I'm genuinely nervous about their development now. Like
Mm-hmm.
like there's so many talented college quarterbacks that came out to this draft with Joe Burrow, with Justin Herbert, with Tua. there are so many quarterbacks that this was supposed to be the turnaround of the league. Like, we've obviously, Patrick Mahomes is probably going to be the face of the NFL when Tom Brady leaves. But the excitement with Patrick Mahomes, the excitement of Deshaun Watson, Lamar Jackson, and you've got some of these rookie quarterbacks that were coming in, you were starting to think that this might be the mold of quarterbacks for a few years, and maybe Gardner Minshew, but that's just totally different. But now I don't know. I mean, the first year for rookies is so essential. Well, the first year of the NFL is so essential for players, and especially at the quarterback position, because you're going to see defensive schemes you just did not see in college.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm genuinely nervous about some of these quarterbacks and how they're going to play out if the season does not happen this year.
Yeah, I, I'm really worried about even the next year's draft because you got to
Yeah,
think about like all of those guys who might not get a full college season, if at all.
it's a whole year that they don't have tape.
Yeah, do they not? Yeah, so yeah, do you not do a draft? What about all the do their eligibility? I mean, their eligibilities are still going to roll over. The NCAA's kind of made that clear with how spring sports last year ended up, but how is that going to work out for the future? Like all this stuff that's happening now, how's that going to impact the sport and all these sports next year? And then you even look even further than that, you got all the high school players who now they've lost their high school careers, the end of their high school careers, for classes to be online, and how do they translate into college, and how does that then impact the NFL from years from now?
This is something that Allison said in one of her stories for WTXL. My heart breaks the most for athletes that, in their head, or maybe there's recruiters that have told them this, coaches, they need that one more year of tape, like
Mm-hmm.
that one more year of tape. And to have that potentially taken away to change their whole life, it breaks my heart, man. I mean, there's so many athletes out there that I wish the best for, that maybe needed that one more season, just one season. They have a breakout year, and their whole life could change. They could get overwhelmed with scholarships, and now that may not be the case.
I was
And that's
about to
just the
say, there's
reality
think
of
of
it.
all the examples of players who had done nothing up until their senior year of high school and blew up, got that scholarship, got all those scholarship offers, played well throughout college, and then got into the pro leagues. And think of how many people now that's not going to happen for. And it's sad, but at the same time, is that a necessary sacrifice with what's going on right now?
Mhm.
That's the big questions everyone's got to ask themselves and think about. And it's not an easy answer. It's not a fun answer. It's not something we want to think about as sports fans. Right now, I should be thinking about, is Matthew Stafford going to come back healthy this season, and how many touchdowns is he going to throw for? Shouldn't have to sit here thinking about what about some junior in high school not potentially being able to play any sports this season, and how is that going to impact not only him but the leagues moving forward in the future. 2020 is going to be a year that needs to be taught about in history books, and
No
not a
doubt.
fun time, not for good
20,
reasons.
2020 will be a year that will be in the history books, I think, because not only because of COVID, that's what happened, but everything that has changed because of it. And it's a big election year. Like, a lot of things are going on in 2020. And uh, just the way it is, 2020 vision, I guess. I guess that's will be the nickname. I mean, just we finally start seeing things a little more clear about what's important.
So I hate to end this on a sad note, so I'm trying to figure out a way to bring it back around and bring it all
Yeah,
back. But so so Nathan, just kind of give everyone a little quick what's everything's been going on with you. Just real quick here to end. A little more try to happy note.
sure. Positive thing going on in life for me. My beautiful girlfriend and I are coming up on 2.5 years. I'm excited about that. We've got a bright future for us and things that we're planning on doing. She's actually somebody that convinced me to consider the career career change of being a registered behavioral technician. As that's what she's been doing for the last year and has loved every second of it, and the amount of impact that she has on these kids. And when they walk in the door for the first time, for their first session, and kind of seeing how much they grow with communication, and how much they are just happier as a kid with autism, and really not let people take that away as a negative thing, and almost embrace that they have it. The change that she helps with that is really cool to see, and that was something that I wanted to give a shot. Um, so that's something that I'm really excited about. Um, Other than that, just kind of getting ready for a potential football season. Baseball's supposed to be back with the 60 game season. So as long as that happens, a lot of national journalists are trying to say that this will be the year that the Rays finally win the World Series, and whether it has an asterisk or not, if that does happen, my room will be covered in championship merch. I do not have a single shirt of any championship. Jacob, we've talked about it, but whether it's baseball, football, basketball, hockey, soccer, I do not have a championship shirt for anything. Like Man City for Premier League, they've won the Premier League. They've never won Champions League. The Atlanta Hawks don't win anything. The Jags don't win anything. The Rays are always shucks, like so close. Last year they were like, they almost beat the Astros, but they were cheating, and you had the better record against the Yankees last year, so you probably would have went to the World Series, but it just didn't happen. Didn't happen. The year that we had to have a game 163 because we were tied at game 162, we won that game. We won the wild card game, and then the Red Sox just came in and they swooped it. And then when game 162, we hit a walk-off home run to make it to the playoffs and won the wild card. The Texas Rangers just got them. So positivity, 2020 could be the year for the Rays, and that's where I'm leaving it at.
As a Lions, Pistons, Tigers, and now Red Wings fan, I feel you on that one.
Thanks for having me on, man.
No problem. Leave some plugs where people can follow you, find you.
Follow me at Nathan Dean 904. Always representing the 904. So you can follow me on Twitter at Nathan Dean 904. I'm pretty sure my Instagram handle is the exact same. So
there'll be links on screen and in the descriptions.
It should be Nathan Dean 904. But definitely subscribe to Jacob here because he's doing some cool stuff with his podcast and some cool stuff with the video game videos that he makes. I've never been a big Minecraft person, but you've always found things that I was like, okay, that's actually pretty funny. So, but definitely appreciate you having me on, and I'm really excited to see what you can do up north for your new adventure with your new station, man.
Appreciate that. Thank you. Thanks for coming on. Thanks for being the first guest. Hope to keep talking to you more. We'll get you on at some point, catch up, see what's going on, and I'll always be, unless the Lions are playing the Jags, I'll always be rooting for the Jags to do something cool. And
the Lions are supposed to be playing the Jags this year.
I know. If I was going to live down here, I was getting a ticket to that game, but that's not happening.
I was looking forward to that one, to have the bragging rights when we make you guys pay for taking Jeff Okudah before us. So
yeah, I'm not sorry about that one.
We'll see, man. We'll see.
Well, it was great talking to you. Catch up soon.
Yeah, man. You take care of yourself, bro.
Yeah, you too. Make sure you go follow Nathan on his social medias, especially Twitter. He's a great follow on Twitter. And make sure you go follow me on Twitter and YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, whatever you want to follow me on. Please go follow me on that. And all my links will be down below as well. And see you guys all next time.